That. Oh, we should be good. Okay, now we got sound. Oh, these, the Elon Musk sent up that SpaceX ship a while back, and it just screwed everything up. But like, I think we're good now. Uh, so, all right, Martin Bowes just liked this video. That's crazy. Back to you. We could probably do 18,000 episodes on just you, but let's start. We'll try to start here with what is Sector 6 Communications?
Well, Sector 6 originally started as a club night in Asbury Park, New Jersey,
Okay.
back in 1989.
89.
And yeah, and then uh, and it's the whole point was it was a response to where industrial nights were going and the idea that things
Mhm.
I had already seen things kind of mainstreaming in a way that was uncomfortable, especially because I had seen, as a first generation punk rocker, I saw what happened in punk rock and the kind of evolution of like how subculture becomes commodified. So
And
then
you saw that for
and I
industrial in
also saw that in
89.
hip hop, by the way.
What's that?
So that I said I also saw that in hip
Okay.
hop, by the way. So after seeing those two genres go that in that direction, industrial, I felt like I was determined to be a stalwart to hold the fort. And so
That is
um,
amazing.
this brother T and I had done that, and with a number of people collaborating, and what followed that was a number of iterations of going further and further outside of producing like in clubs, and then doing more. And because I was also one like in that first generation of people doing outlaw parties, which were turned into raves and such.
Wow.
So
Okay.
it was kind of throwing all that stuff together, and trying to find different forms of expression. Um, the the idea of what punk rock was to me meant the freedom of expression, like we can do whatever,
Uh-huh.
because at that point in the early days of punk rock, then you know the the difference in bands. So if you were to take like all out of the same night or
Yeah.
club, you could have the Dickies, the Damned, the Cure, and the Psychedelic Furs.
Oh,
You like,
oh.
like so, like in other words, it was all these things that became all these bands that became archetypes. You could
Mhm.
see you saw in number of places on the same bills, which is the
That's
same thing
amazing.
that, like, in the early days of the industrial scene,
Mhm.
a lot of the early festivals or the early like big shows
Mhm.
and such that had Wax Tracks 1, Wax Tracks 2,
Right.
that all that they premiered, they showed, I mean, the amount of bands that were all on that same bill, that
Mhm.
now you're lucky if you would get three of them on the same bill.
Right.
And so, so the point is that, like, so Sector 6 was answering the time as well. So then, 5 years in, I had been already offered and accepted the head by Kim Cascone of Silent Records to take over Furnace Records,
Okay.
and build out Furnace Records out of San Francisco. So
Uh-huh.
then, although I ran the office in on the Jersey Shore on the East Coast, and the the way that things were coming in, the
Uh-huh.
way that, like, finding bands, like we found this band Onstalt out of Norway, or they from Sweden. Well, Industrial Heads out of Norway, and Dismembered Quietly and Marianne Cafe out of France, and, like, there was just like, and then Pounce International from Ohio. Like, I mean, there was just a ton of
Yeah.
people from all kinds of places. And so the kind of, like, everything at that point was going towards sounding like Frontline or like KMFDM.
Uh-huh.
And that's where where labels were putting their money.
Uh-huh.
Now, a whole bunch of stuff was getting signed at that point. It's just the idea that that's like, the guitar rock model of
Mhm.
industrial had then taken hold to the point where it was even bands that didn't use any traditional instrumentation on, like, in the
Mm.
studio, were using a drummer, guitar player, bass
Mm.
player, keyboard player, so on and so forth, set up live, or like somebody on keys and so on, and always with a guitar. And so I started out as a bass player, but
Yeah.
the frame of um, the frame of the experimental nature that was intrinsic to industrial, then becoming a kind of offshoot, like, then that was experimental
Mm.
industrial, and we're playing the real stuff, and then you guys can do
Okay.
that stuff over there somewhere, to 5 people. And so, like, we're going to bring the audiences here because everybody's really comfortable with what we do, and they're not so comfortable with all not necessarily knowing what's happening, or how is it being made or whatever. And so this in beginning of in the middle of the 90s, at that point, that's when Sector 6 became basically what it is now, which is a socio-political artistic production think tank. So then, but we do direct action, so it's always about not just being a strategic think tank, which we are for a lot of different entities, but to also uh, make sure that our productions represent exactly what we profess to believe. So that's the reason why, like with an event like Hell Labs, Hell Lab, the virtual version of Hell Lab came from the physical version of Hell Lab that I was producing definitely back in the early 2000s.
That is
And so
crazy.
but that was based on parties that I had done at my house, and when I had my house in Long Branch, New Jersey, which I called either Hell House, or they were the first versions of Furnace Lab, which
Okay.
is what turned into Hell Lab. But these were parties that were then, I was getting sick and tired of dealing with the clubs on the shore, and a lot of the clubs were closing at that point too. So then it was the idea of, okay, so then how can I remove all this from the clutches of the arbitrary forces of capitalism? So then, and really deliver music. So there are art, and then so I was able to take. Since I had so many friends that were around touring and such and would be playing the city or whatever, then I was like, all right, well, um, why why don't you come to the Jersey Shore? I'll hook you up, I'll set you up, I'll feed you, I'll wine you, I'll dine you, so on and so forth. You can hang out, and then so the house was set. Like they were surprised because they thought, like, usually if you're playing somebody's house, it's kind of like seems like a squat. But like, but this was just like definitely salons. You're going into a nice house. You're going into a house where somebody lives. You're not just going into a place.
Right.
And so then I hosted a number of people on Emergency Broadcast Network before I was asked to join the band. Um, uh, I uh, Jesus, Mark Jackman. I had Scott Generic, like the whole 23.5 crew when they were on tour. They came through and performed.
That is, I
Um,
gotta pause you for 1 second because I wanna reflect on how amazing everything you're saying right now is. In 1989, this is a pre-internet, zines and tapes world. You can see where industrials, it's this starts out in this Wild West, like three German guys who pulled their money and bought a synthesizer type stuff, and it's turning into this, like, we're gonna write Drug Against War and make it three notes off and call it our own song, and you crystallized, like, you trapped the spirit in a gem, like it's out of a sci-fi movie, and carried that. That is prosaic as hell. Um,
although just to be clear, the roots really of me and industrial really go
hmm,
back to the early '80s. It was just the
okay.
idea that um, where it became evident that like that we needed to produce a night was just
Hmm.
the idea of I had started Abstinence in '85.
Wow. Okay.
So then that was like I did my last hardcore punk rock show in '84,
Okay.
and then '85 was when I like again punk rock and hardcore had already become formulaic, and so then industrial once again had that anything's possible thing,
Right.
and so yeah, so then it's just important to remember that frame of that time because those years were really important
Uh huh.
for industrial and They were like the end of the underground as underground because
I'm
that was
I'm
the last generation.
I'm
That was
tingling
the
out.
last generation. That was the last generation. I don't mean it underground like, oh well, okay, well, nobody else is real
Right.
then. I don't mean it from that kind of false idea. What I'm saying is that it was it was a time that you could stew in your own juices. It was the last generation that like the scene in Boston was drastically different from what happened in New York because
Okay.
outside of traveling you didn't know, or Philadelphia was
Mhm.
different than New York. All the hub places, New
Mhm.
Jersey was different than every place had their own
Mhm.
flair because outside of the people touring, they were local scenes that people hung out locally.
Mm.
And so there wasn't like now you can live in the middle of nowhere and somebody can release something that's like, so if anything pops off becomes viral,
Mhm.
then it becomes viral. So the term viral says everything you need to know about it.
Mm.
That the idea that viral during that time meant it was hot in that region.
Mhm.
Viral now means it's hot globally
Oh,
or
nice.
percent.
See what you did.
So then, because of that, that removes that kind of, uh, the, yeah, the kind of uniqueness of scenes and cultures that blend to really bring that flavor of like other,
Mhm.
and then when you kind of put on top of that the idea that um, real estate has become so expensive
Mhm.
that it's no longer the club night that where like, okay, this is a club that has like, we have a good Thursday, Friday,
Mhm.
Saturday, or a good Friday, Saturday, or whatever.
Mhm.
They have enough nights to generate revenue, so they take their risks on these other nights.
Mm.
That's no, now that's not a thing as much. You can find it, but
Mhm.
not as much. And also, you don't have like, that was the last generation of clubs having street teams.
Okay. Yeah.
So, like the idea of having a whole network of people going around
Mm.
promoting for the venue
Mm.
versus the idea of now the venue says, "Bring me people,"
Right. Clap,
and they
clap.
sit
Let it be
back
done.
and do basically nothing. They
Right.
sit back and do basically nothing, and then they take most of the door, so on and so forth. They're giving very little for
Mm.
what they're giving.
Well, you have
So
solved.
especially if you are a young artist.
Yeah.
So just to kind of wrap a bow on that, that's the kind of stuff that Sector 6 went directly after. That we then created a DJ contract that pissed a lot of people off.
Really.
We created a lot of stuff. Yeah, well, the whole thing was, it was just basic. After decades of chasing people around a club, like if you've chased somebody around a mega club to get paid
Right.
at 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the morning, they're still they're still the place is still packed. It's
Yeah.
a mega club. This person could be anywhere, and they don't even need to be in an area where you can go to, where you can just wander through. So if you've made 2 or 3 laps around a club, then you're like, I have to go back to New Jersey, or even if I didn't, but to me it emphasized the point that like the respect for the artist was kind of left in, like, because certainly, yeah, the respect for the artist was seen as something different, because certainly if I was as flippant about showing up as they were about paying,
There it is.
then they would have had a whole different conversation.
Right.
So then, like, to me, I showed up on time, I was there, I was ready. So then that means when I end my set, I want to have somebody walk up and give me a goddamn envelope and
Ugh.
say, "Here,
Y-
thank you very much. and not have me chase you around the club as if you didn't know when my set was going to end.
It's
Like when I was
insane. Like what
so
other profession?
that
Go on.
is right. So just very quickly, so that was the thing that we were trying to fight, and that you could only fight it. To me, you can't fight a system by just yelling at it, and
Mm.
so or screaming it
That's the
from the
shirt.
void.
Holy shit.
So then, to me, it was the idea of I will show by example. This is how we can do things differently.
Oh. Oh man. Okay, that's you can't fight a system by just yelling at it is like resonating in my heart. Cuz you are still I shouldn't say still, but like you ever stopped because you've kind of solved all five of the things you brought up with this a disconnection and losing an atmosphere because you did create a global one in 2020 with Hell Labs 5. Pretty
Actually,
amazing.
that's virtual, by the way.
Pardon?
That was virtual.
That was
Hell
virtual.
Lab Virtual 2020.
I thought
So
it was 5.
everybody
I
said,
see. We're answering
I
the big
just let it
questions
go.
here on Space
Like,
Couch. No, but correct me, please. I don't want to like bring it up 10 times and on the 11th time you're like, you're saying that wrong. Let's cut to Smash Cut Virtual Festival. We'll do more on it in a second, but I'm excited for it. So let's cut to Hell Lab Supercut.
Up and wondering what's inside, and I'm just going.
And we're back. So dope.
Yeah.
We had Sonic Warriors out of Berlin Kaiko, not sure how that's fully pronounced. Uh,
Keiko.
Keiko, pardon me. Learning our Lori Amat and definitely, of course, Freezatch who's in the chat room now. Let us not forget Providence's own Snow Beasts and Android Lost. Oh gosh, that was such a treat. Tell me a little bit about this endeavor. How did you find the online experience? I can't imagine the work that went into it.
Yeah, to me, doing virtual events, I did my first webcast in '95.
Wow.
Furnace had produced with Dave Grau and Rob Psychotrope and Sheldon Hatch out of Canada, ATT convention. We did the world's first online record release party.
What?
And so that was my ideas of media and interaction have always been focused on the idea of how to reach beyond where we're at. And so, and the idea of but how to make it a personal thing, right? Like I wanted it, like all of the Hell Lab events, like I cooked food and so on and so forth. And it wasn't just like come to the show. It was a thing. It was a gathering.
Wow.
Or like it's based on the 60s happenings. So then it's the idea of how to bring people to a virtual space, but give them a tangible experience. And then so, again, going on the same model as how I created the series back at my house. The idea was like, instead of these are my friends that are on tour, now it's these are my friends trapped at home. And so, like, you know, like we would have never been able to get so many of the artists, like almost all the artists planned on being on the road at that point.
Yeah,
so,
I hear that.
So then it was a really dope way to bring a lot of people into the fold, like Mark Spivey and such, and even Test Department. Nobody had called up, like when all the industrial festivals, and which I saw a bunch of dope ones online, and there was nothing that really focused on, like, again, Hell Lab takes the full breadth of the idea of what industrial is. So that's why you have a band like Freezatch, and then a band like Keiko, and then Test Department, and then Android Lust, and then
Negative
Vinyl Terror and Heart.
Yeah.
So the idea, well, the reason why I said Vinyl Terror and Heart, because they're just drastically different.
Right.
You know, that like they are just drastically different. They are another other. And so they are freaks among freaks.
Gotcha.
And so, like, delightfully so. And so the idea is like how to, instead of like going to a thing where every band basically has the same kind of vibe, or that it fits the three food groups of what modern industrial is, or what any version of industrial is. I mean, I'm not, people confuse my fervent focus on experimental industrial or keeping the experimental within industrial as if I'm just talking about being retro or something. I'm the last person that fits a retro frame. Like, I'm just saying the idea, there's brand new bands that, like, you know, kick ass, that like people that just started writing music, they're teenagers writing it at home, nobody knows who the hell they are, and they're writing dope, freaky music. But the lust for fame, for likes, for likes being considered like the validation, almost the same way that like going to a club, playing a club and having a bunch of people come. And so now that is changed, so then that forces people once again in their primordial stages, which is a really important point. in their primordial stages, then they're thinking about marketing. They're thinking about what the user experience is before they've even created anything that they could call their own.
Oh, okay. You thinking it's the cart before the horse? Are you saying?
In other words, like of course, we all have marketing concerns once we have produced the art.
Okay.
But if when I first started DJing in the early 70s, if I were to have been concerned about what people wanted to hear, or like when I first started playing bass in '76, if I was concerned about what people wanted to hear, or the music that I played, I would have never played fucking hardcore punk rock. I just wouldn't have. Who like, you know, punk? You wouldn't play punk rock in general. I mean, like, you know,
right?
It's not like any of these things. Like when like the terms, like the birth of pop, punk, pop, industrial pop. This, it's like no, like there's pop and then there's industrial. There's pop and then there's punk rock.
Right.
There's no connection. Each one was created in the exact revulsion of the other.
That's fascinating. Yeah.
By the people. I mean, like I talked to Genesis, which I have which that's one of Jen's favorite documentaries of himself or their self. You know, now he's passed, but it's the idea that in all these stages, like Throbbing Gristle came out of Coom. Coom Transmissions had already done a ton of bizarre work going back. Like, you know, so all of the bands, like going to Hell Labs, even the idea of even I said Hell Labs, even that's like people throw the S on it. It's just like
Hell Labs. All right, sorry, I keep screwing you up.
That's actually a definitely one.
Well, let's get into your personal output a bit, because as we talked about a little bit with Noisebox in the last episode, Consolidated is back, and you got a remix on that. It's pretty awesome. Let's hear a little bit of your Consolidated remix. This is great. This is great.
You want to end racism, sexism, police brutality. You want to stop war, climate collapse, and global poverty. Well, try stopping capitalism. Yeah, deal with that. You got a problem in the workplace. You got a problem finding living space. You got a problem with another race. You got a problem dealing face to face. You got a war between the sexes. You got a war between the government. You got a war against your taxes. Wonder where all your fucking money went. Where you been?
And we're live. That is great. That sounds like it came out in 2020 and 1991 at the same time. Like, it's really, really cool. How is the process of remixing guys who, as far as I can tell, fit your bill of being all over the industrial map, and now you get to remix them, and maybe a little bit about your remix process in general.
The idea of definitely had been working with Mark Pistol, and then so that was the connection. Well, that was the modern connection to Consolidated. Back in when I started Sector 6, we had been hovering around Consolidated and we were trying to book. This is when Consolidated and Meat Beat were touring together, and we were trying to get that show on the Shore. I ended up getting it on the Shore, but we weren't on that bill. We were on the next bill. So then, but from that, that was when I originally met Consolidated, and we were talking and so on and so forth. And so that's where the kind of relationship had started. But it was just like, you know, the fleeting thing that happens when bands run into each other, so on and so forth. In any case, so then this process was about how to take the track, and then because they were so focused on like, or inspired by early Public Enemy. So then I had shown Adam a picture of me with Hank Shockley and Jim Thurwell, and so I said, well, I got them both here, and I said, but my point is that like I really wanted to do a kind of Bomb Squad iteration of what that track was, and so that's the reason why it's like it was noisier. Cool. And but what I tried to also do, because I was doing a kind of Adrian Sherwood kind of frame for it, it also was like I kept as much of the original song as I could, while obscuring many other parts and adding on tons of other things. Now, and then of course, yeah, you know, on that version, I didn't mess with Lynn's drums because it's Lynn. Come on now, you know, I was just like, I know that, like, you know, what the skilled remixer in me says, do this thing over here. Right. But then I'm like, I got his drums. I got his, like, I'll program some stuff around it, but like I want these things to be pristine, and then I want to work around those. That's so. So that was what led to that version. I was just incredibly stoked to be in the arsenal of people who did remixes for it. And so, I mean, Jack Danger's, Bass Kitten, and who was the other person? There was one more, and then me. And then, so now I have a second version that's almost done. And that is a completely obscured, this is a Hell version. Okay. Not just a reframing of, but a complete reiteration. Awesome. And it's called the Machine Edit. So that'll be coming out soon. Oh, and awesome. So yeah. Where do we get that? Where should people look for that? It's going to be the same place where all the other ones have come out. Okay, cool. So like consolidated Bandcamp thing. Right. And consolidated or like, you know, it'll be a part of any of the S6K media thread. And you want to check out s6k.com or any other URLs you would want to throw out. I would say the best thing for what we're doing right now would be go to the S6K Media YouTube page, and then you can get a ton of our videos, of our information, of our art, of our investigations for the socio-political side of what we do, and so on and so forth. So that's what you want to check out. Machine Edit is right. You are just do not stop. That's amazing. I have the Abstinence logo on the screen, so I want to get into that a bit. I know we touched on it starting in 1985, but if we could do what we call the superhero origin story on this show, and let us know how, I know you played it in a band called Public Disturbance, bass, and then leading into the continuing experiment, let's say, of Abstinence. Give us a little bit of that timeline. Or philosophy, if you want. I can do it pretty concisely. Because when I entered Public Disturbance in the end of '81 or beginning of '82, it was already a band, and so they had just played with the Dead Kennedys literally the night before I
Get
joined
out.
the band.
That's amazing.
And so then the bass player Bill was going into the military.
Okay.
So then that's what brought me in. So, but the reason why I say that, the entire time decisions were made that had I been in charge, I wouldn't have made. And we went directions, and there were opportunities that we could have maximized that we didn't.
Okay.
Because, I mean, we were kids, to be fair, we were kids, but simultaneously, we should have utilized that time better. And so, to me, I felt like even though we certainly got our respect, so on and so forth, for being part of the movement. But to me, what I was able to do with Abstinence, and which I started, actually Abstinence started out of giving Steve Herring, who was a dude that I rode with. He was a pro skateboarder, and and I BMXer, and then so we were touring together. Then we were working together, and then I was giving him bass lessons, and we were working on like Joy Division and so on and so forth, and all these kind of and New Order and all that kind of stuff, and so we could learn those kind of things. And then it turned into and Killing Joke. Killing Joke was
never heard of him.
That we went through songs and such. So in any case, all this kind of energy kind of balled up and said like, hey, there's something, we got something here. And so the name Abstinence originally came out of the like that was a time when they were pushing that Just Say No campaign. So there was a ton of like abstinence, like, you know, of things about abstinence and such. So then our early samples and early like flyers and such were all these kind of hacks of these flyers about abstinence and such, and like talking about abstinence. And we had these school, that's when they started the drug-free school zones.
Wow.
And then we got some of those signs, and then we turned them around into school-free drug zones and so on and so forth. So it was originally based off of the model of abstaining from the redundancy of what people think is music. So then 2 years into around 87, 88, it turned into abstaining from the redundancy of what people think, period. And so the early Abstinence was a kind of death rock industrial band. So which was kind of framed off of the energy of my father died, and that kind of put my whole life in a tailspin. And so the first Abstinence, which was called Tomorrow's Too Late, was really a kind of lament on life in general. And then after that, very quickly, the next recordings then took on a whole different form, which was then pushing that energy outward. And from there, Abstinence never looked back. And then it went from being kind of introspectively focused on the idea of emotion to being directly focused on the idea of empowerment and what's possible, and stripping down whatever ideas of coercive system are. So that was literally, that version of Abstinence went until the early 90s, so I guess 90, 91, different iterations, people changing, so on and so forth, staff changes. And then I started working with this brother, Mike Roberts. And then that was right at the time that Abstinence had played with Killing Joke. Because we opened up for a number of bands, or that in the early days we were opening up with KMFDM, we opened up for Pigface, and then we played with a ton of bands, 900 Foot Jesus, blah blah blah, so on and so forth. And then so the the kind of, it was, I guess it's kind of interesting because the frame of when we played with Killing Joke was really important for two reasons. One, because after playing with these other bands, we were forced into situations where our volumes were lower. We couldn't change we couldn't change the monitors. We couldn't use our rear lights. We couldn't use our own smoke machine. The house lights had to be a certain degree of on. These were all the things that these bands were doing to make themselves a headliner. And then what sucked was this happened at a venue that we developed at the Fast Lane on the Jersey Shore. Everybody knew what we actually sounded like. So then when we were in these situations, they also knew, well, what are you gonna do? And then, so when we got the bill with Killing Joke, I must say that, like, at that point, I was kind of hesitant. I was stoked for the gig, but I was just like, it's not exposure if you don't get the sound the way you're supposed to.
Yeah, infuriating.
It's not exposure, it's pain.
Right.
It's like, okay, well, it's all these people here, but none of them saw what they were supposed to see. So
yeah,
if underwhelmed or overwhelmed, either way, it's still the idea. It still doesn't fit.
Yeah,
so
right.
in any case, they were incredibly cool. And Raven comes over and he's just like, hey, you can use our because we had two moderate size strobe lights, and they had mega strobe lights. These two huge strobe lights, and they were like, "Oh, we can use this. We can use our."
Yeah, this is Killing Joke.
And say it again.
This is Killing Joke.
This Killing Joke, right?
Yeah.
And this would have been 1992, 90, 90, 91, 92, something like that. And but they were cool as shit, and so that was the thing that just drilled it down. That was just like, all right. So, and it was cool because that was where we met John Bechtel. So then, oddly enough, fast forward 2 years later, we're playing the New Music Seminar, and we're doing a show, and which was the last year of the New Music Seminar. Then, for those that don't know, it was the big thing. It was the big other thing to the CMJ.
Okay. So then we went to play the show. The DJ didn't show up. Long story short, I had one of my tapes in the other producer Michelle in her car, and then so I put my cassette in. They played the cassette. John was on his way to New York to the Limelight to go to a Halloween thing. He was dressed up like Edward Scissorhands. Was guaranteed to win the money when he got there. And so he was there at the bar. And then Abstinence comes on. Like, the DJ music kept him there. And then Abstinence came on, and he was just like, he stayed for the whole thing. Get out of here.
About to leave. And then he came over and he was just like, hey, so, dude, that was dope, so on and so forth, blah, 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 blah. And then he was just like, yeah, we should jam sometime. Now, the funny thing was then when he said who he was, I couldn't remember his name. But then when he had said that, he goes, well, I'm in Killing Joke. And I said, wait, when did you join Killing Joke? And then he was like, for the Extremities tour. And I was like, oh shit, we played together.
Okay.
And then from that point forward, John has been an essential part of Abstinence's sound. And so, and now John is celebrating damn near 20 years in ministry.
Well, you are setting me up so easily. You did. Not only are you the industrial Paragon, you're also a filmmaker. Let's play the trailer for Killing the Joke. You guys, this is amazing. Check this out, everybody.
Well, he's a pretty special person.
It's just a classic moment of youth gone wild in the electronic music studio.
He has a very active, inner life.
Reese Fulber was actually the one who suggested him.
On the edge of his craft.
If you can't get your emotional needs met in life, you go to art.
All I've thought about for over 3 years is developing this Cloverfield meets Frontline non-linear documentary that has a through thread firmly based in the evolution of John Bechtel and 36 hours on the road with Ministry.
Which is the journey.
So, amazing. We can get now on Vimeo, Killing the Joke, the John Bechtel documentary. Because why wouldn't you be also a filmmaker? Give us the 411 on Killing the Joke.
The idea of Killing the Joke, John's sister, Allison, had gotten a lot of recognition for her show Fun Home. She's a graphic novelist, and she just does amazing work. She's a force of nature. And so she's John's older sister.
Right.
And so when I originally met her, that was when Abstinence was playing a benefit for a women's rape crisis center in Burlington, Vermont. And this was 94, 95, late days, sometime around then, mid-90s. And then, so we stayed at Allison's house then, because she lives up in Vermont. And so it was an interesting kind of journey. Like, all of a sudden I'm like thinking about, like, I'm watching Allison on all these shows and so on and so forth, and watching her being interviewed and on C-SPAN and such. And I was like, how dope is this? And then John was just about to, I think he was celebrating 15 years playing with Ministry, 10, 15 years, something like that. And it just made it was like, holy shit, like, John has played with, like, when I met him, he had played with Killing Joke. Before that, he was playing with Martin Atkins.
Right. Prong.
Then after Killing Joke, he played with Prong and Murder Inc. and so on and so forth. And then he played with God, there was one more band that was a big one.
Well, I mean, even that resume.
That was the idea of all those bands that, like, he had done so much, and then but nobody knew who the hell he was.
That's incredible.
And it was always on that kind of frame of the joke of
Fear Factory.
The old joke of Fear Factory, right? Thank you. And so the old joke of that the only person who gets laid less than the bass player is the keyboard player. Which, like, because people always cared about the joke is based on the idea that everybody knows the name of the singer and everybody knows the name of the guitar player.
Right.
But like, it's like, well, who was the keyboard player? Well, if you're not really into the art, I don't know.
Right. Yeah. Some guy.
And so, some guy, I don't know. And so in any case, so because John was other than the some guy category, then because obviously I had so much access to him and his family, to me it was kind of a no-brainer on one side, but then incredibly difficult on the other, because it's like, I'm used to doing documentaries, interviews, and investigations on people, things, and situations, but like this was weird, like to go into somebody who I love and care about and to like dig into their life and think about like and how to tell a story that I felt that was bigger than him and that wasn't focused on ministry even all ministry either, although it was framed around both.
Right.
And so because if you look at all the different interviews, all the people I used to articulate the story are not the typical people that people would have gotten. Of course, you would have gotten the other band members. That would be a no-brainer. And going back to his sister, but like, you know, talking to his daughters, talking to his son, talking to his wife, talking to his childhood best friend, like, you know, Greta Brakeman was another person from his childhood who she was in Moby. She quit after playing doing 2 or 3 tours with Moby.
Wow.
And I used her as an example of like, well, the whole idea is that like, you know, if you're on tour, and just in general to demystify the kind of rock star, the rock star video of like, hey, all the hijinks and so on.
Right.
I don't give a damn, man. You know, and instead to show the idea of how all the responsibilities of what it means to be on the road, and
that's
actually awesome. What it takes also the sacrifices that it takes to then be on the road, and like, you know, talking to his daughter about like, you know, how he had missed her first everything.
Get out.
And then how he tried to, and then talking to his other kids and how they, like, you know, he realized like, you know, okay, I need to do something about that. And then he made sure he was there for his other kids. These are things that you have to figure out. You can't just run it. There's no manual.
Right.
And so when you're getting these opportunities, you're getting these gigs, the gigs of your life. That like, you know, okay, we're about to go on tour for the next 5 months.
Right.
Now we got to go work this next album for the next 3.5 months. So each time that means I'm not going to be here.
Yeah,
and
that's
so
crazy.
That happens in that time frame. So I felt like by articulating that story, it could actually help also tell a different story about what it means to be an artist and to be a counterbalance to this kind of, money and sex.
Right.
Kind of like goodness and sex, because that's what we get out of it. That's what we get out of art. It's like, no, that's not what we get out of art. That's what a bunch of people do anywhere. And then when they do it as an artist, it just gets amplified.
Amazing. I want to jump in with this because it's just a crazy aside. Allison, his sister, is one of the women for whom the Bechdel test is named. Just a crazy. We live in a world where the person that ostensibly gave us the Bechdel test, her brother is the keyboard player for Ministry. Just that's one of these this cosmic.
No, she is the person who. She was the person.
I thought it was hyphenated.
That's because Bechdel.
Right. I mean, amazing. Check it out. It's on Vimeo now. It's called Killing the Joke. I want to jump to this. It's okay if we go long, but this hour has just been flying by. But one thing I want to get in, because it's coming up. Whistleblower TV, Hostile Takeover Live, a performance video event. Where can we check this out, and what can we expect?
Wait, which one are you going for?
Whistleblower TV, the Hostile Takeover Live.
TV. Well, right now, Abstinence is on hold. I mean, you know, with COVID, it's really forced the idea. Like, technically, we were supposed to be filming the new Whistleblower TV in 2 weeks. So to give you the frame on that real quick, is the idea that, like, going back to how we recorded Multiple Crosswinds, which was a live video shoot, versus the idea of having it be a kind of studio thing. So then the video will be 100% live as it's performed, but we're doing that at the Brooklyn Micro Museum, which is one of the oldest, as far as I know, the oldest experimental art facility in Brooklyn, or certainly in like anywhere in the downtown Brooklyn, Bed-Stuy, Crown Heights region. So so we're really looking forward to filming that. But I think that the whole COVID thing probably pushed that off until, I would imagine, maybe we'll be able to release in the spring.
Okay.
Because I don't know. In other words,
sure.
Who knows? I have no idea. Who knows when we're going to get the green light?
Gotcha.
To be able to have definitely traveled down a bunch of times.
Yeah. The guest of the show, fellow Gossicle, definitely is also an Abstinence co-conspirator. Let's do this. What's next for the mighty DARRYL HELL? And if you feel like it, knowing all that you know, being there at the start, dare I say, influencing industrial as a genre. In addition to you personally, what do you think is next for industrial?
I can say what I think is next for industrial is I'll basically reiterate the things that I said when I was handed Furnace by Kim Cascone. The coolest thing that's happening right now is happening in somebody's garage, basement, bedroom, closet, whatever. And so there's always going to be experimentation, and there's always going to be experimentation, and the reality is the mainstream runs away. And so just like in jazz, just like in punk rock, so on and so forth, the poppy people show up for a while and then they go away and then they'll leave whatever's left. And so now, it's not poppy to be into jazz. If you're into it, you're into it. And so in 10, 15 years, industrial will go that same path. And we're already talking about 20 years or 15 years, really 20 years since there was like multiple mega clubs in New York City that packed people for industrial. Now they're lucky to be able to get a hefty crowd at in the basement of the Pyramid. And so, so I would dare say that there's always going to be something. Every genre has something, and to use an old joke, Jean Dixon and her psychic friends don't give a fuck about us. So I don't know.
Okay, that is.
And then me. So
yes.
Then, I'm a high school teacher. So then the main thing is thinking about the idea of what happens for the idea of virtual learning, which I always hate the term remote learning. I don't use it. And because there's nothing remote about it. Remote means distant, and so on and so forth. Like, I'm not remote when I'm engaging my students, whether it's online or whether it's by phone or whatever. I'm always going to engage my students the same way. But focused on that, and we also have coming up our Club Patient Zero Media Lounge. And we have Evan Mickelson coming up on this Tuesday, and it's going to be dope. She's going to do a segment where basically now, like for Hell Lab, we had done a part where she came in and she did a quick 20-minute segment and such. And so we did a little segment of if Evan was the director of Oddities, what would a segment have been like? Amazing. And then so now we're going to do a full, because a show minus the commercials was about 40 minutes. So we're going to do a full episode worth of Evan doing or directing a idea of her show, but through the idea of having her at her place, and that she has an amazing archive of things that, like, that her storage of things at home are things that would never go anywhere. So then it's going to be a really, really unbelievable rare treat.
So that is Club Patience Zero Media Lounge. I'm assuming we can search for that on Facebook or any of that shit.
You could go to facebook.com/CPZ Media Lounge.
Mm-hmm. And that's Tuesday out of Brooklyn?
Tuesday, yeah, it's Tuesday, 8 o'clock.
Awesome, awesome. So Eastern time zone.
I'll be in Brooklyn, she'll be in New Jersey.
New Jersey. And what do you teach for high school?
I teach theater tech and media literacy.
That is amazing. And Nick Jones of the Boundless asks, how can I find Sektor 6 Communications on Facebook? You type it into the search engine. What do you? I mean, you're not anything crazy.
Well, I mean, that's actually an apt question.
Okay, my bad.
What we've been doing is now the reason why I can have URL S6K3 is because I think we registered that. Crowd can answer that for sure, but I think because he actually showed me the paper at one point recently, but I think it was 95, 96 when we registered the URL. So it was having a website then was important because that was the way to distribute yourself. But now, having an archive going back from the 90s forward, now I'm trying to move all that onto more durable systems, because if I drop dead but seriously, when I drop dead 2 years, in 2 years, even depending on the cycle, the most I would have paid for was 2 years in advance. So then all the URLs go dead.
Right.
Somebody buys 6k.com because they try to buy it every year. I get offers, and so it'll go dead, and then all my information will then go for naught. So I'm trying to now put things in places. Like, I've been paying attention to, like, I have friends that passed 10 years ago that are still on Facebook.
Mm-hmm.
So then it's like, so there are things. So I've been posting a lot of things between YouTube and Facebook as more durable than my website. And I imagine what'll happen is that stuff at some point will just be archived and still searchable, although not engageable. And so at least all this stuff will be in a place where it doesn't have scheduled obsolescence already, because 2 years after I'm dead is too quick.
Well, we've now beamed the signal out here into the cosmos and bounced it off of Saturn, so aliens will get this interview at some point in the future. Let's make that you're out. We're going to bring this rogue flying couch back into the station. DARRYL, this was an incredible episode. We scratched the surface of the surface. I know there's more. You want to check out Killing a Joke on Vimeo. Club Patience Zero Media Lounge coming up. New consolidated remix out now with one in the clip. Check those both out. I know you have the internet because that's how you're watching the show. So this is Space Couch for DARRYL, for Sektor 6 Communications, for Abstinence, for fill in 18 more blanks because I know you have a lot of irons in the fire. Space Couch out.
Thank you. Thank you. This was all. I mean, it's always hard to, like, you don't want to go long, but you don't want to go short. So, like, it's you know, it's like it's always trying to find like that you know, that middle ground of how can I give you more of what you want while not drowning you in stuff. Oh yeah. Yeah, dude, and certainly, you know, if you can make it to New York, certainly make it your point to, and you know, come because you know I have a community park, so yeah, come to my park. I'll cook. We have an amazing offset cooker that we just got, so I will cook you the most amazing. Even if you just have vegetables, if you are only a vegetarian, I smoke vegetables to the point of where you will want to slap somebody's parent. Thank you, bro. Take care.